Morning, and today I'm going to be talking about the Federal Theater and the Group Theater and how theater just survived the 1930s and the Great Depression. So first we end up having the Group Theater. The Group Theater was a literal organization. They ended up playing in the 1930s and they would play all around the states. And one of their biggest things was American naturalism and making feel-good stories, stories that had hope, stories that revolved around success and really having a brighter future. And this is one of those things that was very sort of like the starting point of a lot of American naturalism that we see even now. The idea that of like success stories, the idea of going from poor to rich to being, hopeful of the future, to having a bright future. In the context of it, you had the Great Depression. Everybody was out of a job. People couldn't afford groceries. You really didn't have a lot of money. You didn't have a lot of hope. And with these stories, you create hope. You allow people to have positive stories. You allow people to sort of realize that there can be a better time in the future. And this goes on for a long time. This is how a lot of theater is shaped in America. And then we end up getting to the Federal Theater. So the Federal Theater was a new plan project. So the new plan was something that FDR proposed. It was sort of an economic pullback from the Great Depression. And one of those things was it allowed for actors all around the U.S. to actually have jobs because, if people didn't have any money on the standard way in which businesses run, you don't have any money to allow these theaters to process, and then you end up having a lot more of the workforce being added on into the unemployment. So federal theater was, you had a lot of departments and regions all around the U.S., literally like a federalist idea of how it was run. And they would subsidize all of these plays. They would end up like the federal theaters didn't even need to make a profit. They were just there to make their plays and allow for these people to have their jobs and allow for people who didn't have a lot of money to go and a lot more like a get your hopes or get your spirits up sort of attitude to it. It allowed people to have like entertainment despite being very poor. And one of these biggest plays was the Living Newspaper. It was plays based off of current events. And we ended up having one called Ethiopia, which gets shut down because of Mussolini being in it. And, they decided that heads of state couldn't be in them. But we also have a lot of other ones like Power, and these go on, and they sort of do a lot with striking and a lot more leftist ideology. And this is what really leads to a downfall because politicians really don't want that being expressed. But all in all, the Federal Theater and the Group Theater allow for theater to really live out the Depression and go on into the baby boom and the post-World War II economy.